The rain fell like bullets on the night Cade Thorne came to collect his collateral. He expected defiance. He expected tears. He expected the fire of a spoiled heiress who would scream and fight her way into captivity. Instead, he found Lena Voss, silent, hollow-eyed, and utterly broken, standing in the rain like she'd been waiting for death all along. Her father didn't even look back as he drove away. And in that moment, the most feared mafia boss in the city realized he hadn't acquired a hostage. He'd inherited a ghost. And ghosts, he would learn, are far more dangerous than enemies. If you want to see where this story goes, stay until the end and drop a like and comment with your city so I can see how far Lena and Cade's story travels across the world. 10. The rain had no mercy. It hammered against the cracked pavement of the industrial district, turning the streets into rivers of oil-slicked water that reflected the dim glow of dying streetlights. The air smelled of rust, diesel, and something darker, something that clung to places where bad deals were made and worse promises were broken. Cade Thorne stood in the center of it all, hands buried in the pockets of his black wool coat, rain streaming down the sharp planes of his face. He didn't flinch, didn't move. The cold didn't touch him. Nothing did. Behind him, 3 SUVs idled in formation, their engines purring like caged predators. His men waited inside, silent and still, their hands resting on weapons they hoped they wouldn't need tonight. But hope was a luxury in Cade's world. In his world, you prepared for blood and prayed for business. Tonight was supposed to be business, a truce, a fragile temporary alliance between 2 families who had spent the last decade trying to annihilate each other. The Thorne Syndicate and the Voss Empire had finally reached a stalemate. Too many bodies, too much money lost, too many enemies circling like sharks drawn to chum in the water. So they'd made a deal. The Voss family would deliver collateral, a guarantee of good faith. A daughter. The eldest Voss heiress, raised in silk and champagne, groomed to marry into power. She would live in Cade's penthouse for 6 months while the truce solidified. A hostage in all but name. Cade had agreed because it made strategic sense. Control the daughter, control the father. It was cold. It was calculated. It was exactly the kind of move that had made him the most feared man in the city by the time he was 30. But as the sleek black sedan pulled into the empty lot, something felt wrong. The car door opened, and Cade's instincts, the ones that had kept him alive through 3 assassination attempts and 2 coups, screamed that this wasn't what he'd been promised. The girl who stepped out into the rain wasn't an heiress. She was a ghost. Lena Voss didn't stumble, didn't hesitate. She simply stepped. 1 foot in front of the other, her thin dress clinging to her body like a second skin, her dark hair plastered to her pale face. She wore no coat, no shoes, just a simple gray dress that looked like it had been pulled from a donation bin. She didn't look at the man in the driver's seat, her father's lieutenant, a man named Gregor who had stone-cold eyes and a reputation for enjoying his work a little too much. She didn't look back at the sedan as it began to reverse, tires splashing through puddles. She just walked forward, toward Cade. Cade's jaw tightened. This wasn't right. This wasn't the spoiled, furious daughter of Marcus Voss. This wasn't a woman who would spit in his face and demand to be returned. This was something else entirely. "Stop," Cade said, his voice cutting through the rain. The girl stopped. She stood 3 feet away, her arms loose at her sides, her head slightly bowed. Water dripped from her hair, from her chin, pooling at her bare feet. She didn't shiver, didn't speak. Cade's second in command, a man named Ronan with a scar across his throat and a lifetime of loyalty, stepped forward. "Boss, this isn't—" "I know," Cade said quietly. He studied the girl. She was young, early 20s maybe. Delicate features, hollow cheeks, dark circles under eyes that stared at nothing. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days, looked like she hadn't slept in longer. "What's your name?" Cade asked. The girl's lips parted. Her voice was barely a whisper, nearly lost in the rain. "Lena." "Lena Voss?" A pause. Then a small nod. Cade's eyes narrowed. "Where's your sister?" Because this couldn't be the daughter Marcus had promised. Marcus Voss had 2 daughters. The eldest, Natalia, was the pride of the family, beautiful, sharp, educated in Europe. The youngest, Cade had never heard her name before tonight, Lena's expression didn't change. I don't have a sister. You're lying. No. Her voice was flat, empty. I'm the only daughter Marcus Voss has left. Cade felt something cold settle in his chest. He turned slightly, his gaze flicking to Ronan. Get Gregor back here. But the sedan was already gone, swallowed by the rain and the darkness. Of course it was. Cade looked back at the girl, at Lena, and saw the truth in her hollow eyes. She wasn't here because she mattered. She was here because she didn't. Marcus Voss had sent the daughter no one wanted, the one he could afford to lose. It was an insult wrapped in compliance, a middle finger hidden behind a handshake. And it was brilliant, because Cade couldn't retaliate, not without breaking the truce, not without starting a war that would cost him everything he'd built. Marcus had delivered a daughter, just as promised. That she was the wrong daughter, the forgotten one, the expendable one, didn't technically violate the agreement. Cade felt rage simmer beneath his skin, cold and controlled. But when he looked at Lena, standing in the rain like she was waiting for him to kill her, the rage shifted into something else, something uncomfortable, pity. He hated it immediately. Get in the car, Cade said. Lena obeyed without a word, walking toward the middle SUV. Ronan opened the door for her, his face carefully blank. She slid inside, dripping water onto the leather seats, and sat perfectly still. Cade climbed in beside her. Ronan took the front passenger seat. The driver, a man named Eli, who'd been with Cade since the beginning, put the SUV in gear. They drove in silence. The city blurred past the tinted windows. Neon signs reflected off wet pavement. Late-night pedestrians hurried through the rain, umbrellas bent against the wind. The world kept moving, indifferent to the girl sitting in the back of a Mafia Boss's car, being delivered to a cage she'd never escape. Cade watched her from the corner of his eye. She hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers loosely interlaced. Her breathing was shallow but steady. She looked resigned, like she'd already accepted whatever came next. It unsettled him. When did you last eat? Cade asked. Lena's gaze didn't shift from the window. I don't remember. Yesterday? This morning? I don't remember, she repeated, her tone unchanged. Cade's jaw clenched. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick text to his head of household staff. Prepare a meal, something light. Have it ready in 20 minutes. He pocketed the phone and leaned back against the seat. You understand the situation you're in? Yes. You're collateral. You'll stay in my penthouse until the truce is finalized. 6 months. Yes. If your family violates the terms, you're the first casualty. Lena's expression didn't flicker. I understand. Cade studied her. You're not afraid. It wasn't a question. Lena finally turned her head, her dark eyes meeting his for the first time. They were empty. Completely, utterly empty. I stopped being afraid a long time ago, she said quietly. Something about the way she said it, calm, factual, like she was commenting on the weather, sent a chill through Cade that had nothing to do with the rain. He didn't respond. The SUV pulled into the underground garage of the Thorn Tower, a 60-story building of glass and steel that dominated the city's skyline. Cade owned the top 10 floors. The penthouse was his fortress, his sanctuary, his empire's beating heart. Eli parked. Ronan opened the door. Cade stepped out, then paused, looking back at Lena. She hadn't moved. Get out, he said. She obeyed, sliding out of the car with the same quiet compliance. Her bare feet touched the cold concrete floor, and she stood, waiting. Cade gestured toward the private elevator. This way. They rode up in silence. The elevator was lined with dark wood and soft lighting, designed to impress and intimidate in equal measure. Lena stared at the floor numbers as they climbed. 30, 40, 50. When the doors opened on the 60th floor, she stepped out without hesitation. The penthouse was a study in controlled opulence. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, rain streaking down the glass like tears. The furniture was dark leather and chrome, the floors polished marble. Everything was sharp edges and cold surfaces. Beautiful, sterile, a fortress. Cade's head of staff, a woman named Margot, 50s, efficient to the point of ruthlessness, was waiting in the foyer. Her eyes flicked over Lena, taking in the soaked dress, the bare feet, the hollow stare. Her expression didn't change. "Sir," Margot said crisply, "the guest room is prepared. Dinner will be ready in 15 minutes. Good. Get her dry clothes." Margot nodded. She approached Lena, her movements brisk and professional. "This way, miss." Lena followed without a word, disappearing down the hallway. Cade stood alone in the foyer, rain dripping from his coat onto the marble floor. Ronan stepped up beside him. "Boss, this is a problem." "I know." "Marcus played us." "I know." "If we send her back, we look weak. If we keep her, we're babysitting a liability." Cade's gaze remained fixed on the hallway where Lena had vanished. "She's not a liability." "Then what is she?" Cade didn't answer, because he didn't know. Not yet. 15 minutes later, Lena reappeared. She wore simple clothes, black leggings, an oversized gray sweater that Margot must have pulled from storage. Her hair was still damp, but no longer dripping. Her feet were bare but clean. She looked smaller somehow, younger, more breakable. Margot led her to the dining room, a long glass table with a view of the city sprawling below. A single plate had been set at one end. Soup, bread, water. Lena sat without being told. Cade stood near the windows, watching her. She picked up the spoon, her movements slow and deliberate, and took a small sip of the soup. Then another. She ate mechanically, without enjoyment, like fueling a machine. "Where did you grow up?" Cade asked. Lena swallowed. "The estate?" "The Voss estate?" "No, the old one, outside the city." Cade frowned. He knew the Voss family had properties scattered across 3 states, but the old estate wasn't one he'd heard mentioned in years. "Why there?" Lena set down her spoon. "Because no one goes there." "Why not?" She looked at him, and for the first time something flickered in her eyes. Not fear, not anger, just exhaustion. "Because I wasn't supposed to be seen," she said simply. Cade felt something twist in his chest. "How long were you there?" "Since I was 8. 14 years. Lena nodded. Cade's mind raced. 14 years hidden away. 14 years erased. He'd spent months researching the Voss family, building files on every member, every weakness, and somehow they'd kept her invisible. "Why?" he asked, his voice sharper than intended. Lena's gaze dropped back to her soup. "I don't know." She was lying, or maybe she wasn't. Maybe she genuinely didn't know why her own family had buried her alive. Cade crossed the room, pulling out the chair across from her. He sat, his eyes never leaving her face. "What happened to your mother?" Lena's hands stilled. "She died." "When?" "When I was 8. The same year she was sent away." Cade filed that information away. "And your father?" Lena's expression went carefully blank. "He's alive." "That's not what I asked." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "He's alive," she repeated, her tone flat. Final. Cade leaned back, studying her. She was protecting Marcus. Or maybe she was protecting herself. It didn't matter. He could read between the lines. Marcus Voss had thrown away his daughter like garbage. And now she was Cade's problem. "You'll stay here," Cade said. "You won't leave the penthouse without permission. You won't contact your family. You won't try to escape." "I won't," Lena said quietly. "If you try, you'll be caught. And the consequences will be severe." "I understand." Cade waited for fear, for anger, for some kind of reaction, but Lena just picked up her spoon and continued eating. The first week passed in silence. Lena moved through the penthouse like a shadow. She woke early, before sunrise, and sat by the windows watching the city come to life. She didn't ask for anything, didn't complain, didn't speak unless spoken to. Margot left meals on the dining table. Lena ate them quietly, then washed her own dishes. Something that clearly irritated Margot, though she said nothing. Cade watched. He couldn't help it. He told himself it was strategy. He needed to understand her, predict her, make sure she wasn't a threat. But the truth was more complicated. He was fascinated. Because Lena Voss wasn't what he'd expected. She wasn't a pawn. She wasn't a victim crying for rescue. She was something else, something he couldn't quite name. She sketched. He discovered it by accident on the 3rd day. He'd come home early, unusual for him, and found her sitting cross-legged on the floor of the library, a pencil in her hand, a notebook spread across her lap. She'd drawn the city skyline, every building, every window, every shadow rendered in precise, delicate lines. It was beautiful, haunting. She looked up when she sensed him in the doorway. "I found the notebook in the drawer," she said quietly. "I'm sorry. I should have asked." "It's fine," Cade said, stepping closer. "Where did you learn to draw?" Lena glanced down at her work. Books. There were a lot of books at the old estate. "And nothing else?" "No." She closed the notebook, setting the pencil aside. "Just books." Cade felt that uncomfortable twist in his chest again. 14 years alone with nothing but books. 14 years of silence and isolation. No wonder she was a ghost. "Keep the notebook," he said. "Use whatever you need." Lena blinked, surprise flickering across her face. "Thank you." Cade turned and left before he could say something stupid. By the second week, the penthouse felt different. Lena had begun to cook. Margot had been shocked the first time she walked into the kitchen to find Lena preparing breakfast. Eggs, toast, coffee. Simple things. But the kitchen had smelled warm. Alive. Margot had reported it to Cade immediately, like it was a security breach. Cade had shrugged. Let her cook. Now, every morning, he came downstairs to find fresh coffee and something warm on the stove. Lena never ate with him. She prepared the food, set it out, and disappeared. But the gesture lingered. He started noticing other things, too. The books in the library had been reorganized, not alphabetically, but by theme, by color, in a way that somehow made more sense. The plants Margot had neglected for months were suddenly thriving, their leaves green and vibrant. The windows were cleaner, the air felt lighter. Lena was making the fortress feel less like a cage, and Cade didn't know what to do with that. The turning point came on day 16. Cade had been in meetings all day, back-to-back negotiations with suppliers, enforcers, accountants. The kind of meetings that reminded him why he'd clawed his way to the top, and why he could never afford to let go. He came home exhausted, his mind still spinning with numbers and threats and strategies. And he found Lena sitting in the dark. She was curled up on the couch in the living room, staring out at the city. No lights on, no sound, just stillness. Cade frowned. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" Lena didn't turn. "I didn't want to waste electricity." Cade's chest tightened. "You don't have to worry about that." "I know." Her voice was soft, distant. "Old habit." He crossed the room, flipping on a lamp. Warm light spilled across the space, and he finally saw her face. She looked tired, more tired than usual. "Bad day?" he asked, surprising himself. Lena shrugged. "They're all the same." Cade sat in the chair across from her. "You've been here 2 weeks. You haven't asked for anything, haven't complained. Why?" Lena's gaze finally shifted to him. "What would I ask for?" "Freedom. Contact with your family. Answers." She smiled, just a little. It was the saddest thing Cade had ever seen. "I've never had any of those things," she said quietly. "Why would I start asking now?" Cade didn't have an answer. They sat in silence, the city glittering below them, two people trapped in a deal neither of them had wanted. And for the first time in years, Cade felt something he'd thought he'd buried long ago. Guilt. The phone call came at 2 a.m. Cade answered on the second ring, his voice sharp. "What?" "We've got movement." Ronan's voice was tense. "The Callahan family, they're pushing into the docks." Cade was on his feet immediately, pulling on clothes, his mind already calculating. The Callahans were rivals. Ambitious, ruthless, and stupid enough to test boundaries during a truce. How many? 20, maybe 30? "Send word to the crews, I want everyone on standby." "Already done." Cade grabbed his jacket, his gun, his keys. He was halfway to the elevator when he paused. Lena stood in the hallway, wearing an oversized shirt, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked small, vulnerable. "What's wrong?" she asked quietly. Cade hesitated. He should tell her nothing, should send her back to her room and forget she existed. But instead he said, "Business. Stay inside. Lock the doors." Lena's eyes widened slightly. Is it dangerous? Always. She nodded slowly. Then, so quietly he almost missed it, she said, Be careful. Cade stared at her. No one told him to be careful. No one worried about him. He was Cade Thorne. He was invincible. Except in that moment, standing in the dim hallway with a girl who had every reason to hate him, he didn't feel invincible. He felt human. I will, he said. And then he left. The docks were chaos. Gunfire split the night. Men shouted, cursed, bled. The Callahans had come heavy, and they'd come ready for war. But they'd underestimated Cade. He moved through the battle like a storm, cold, precise, unstoppable. His men followed his lead, cutting through the enemy with ruthless efficiency. Within 20 minutes, the Callahans were retreating, leaving bodies and broken pride in their wake. Cade stood on the pier, blood on his knuckles, rain soaking his shirt. Ronan appeared at his side, breathing hard. We got them. Lost 2 of ours, 5 wounded. Names. Ronan rattled them off. Cade committed them to memory. He'd visit their families, pay for the funerals. It was the least he could do. The Callahans, Cade asked. Running scared. They won't try this again. Cade nodded. He pulled out his phone, checking the time. 4 a.m. He should go to the warehouse, debrief, plan the next move. Instead, he found himself thinking about the penthouse, about Lena, alone in the dark, waiting. I'm heading back, he said. Ronan didn't hide his surprise. Boss? Handle the cleanup. Report in the morning. Cade didn't wait for a response. He climbed into his SUV and drove through the empty streets, his mind racing. When he walked into the penthouse, the lights were still on. Lena was sitting on the couch, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, her eyes red-rimmed. She looked up when she heard him, relief flooding her face. You're okay, she whispered. Cade stopped, stared. She'd waited up. For him. I'm fine, he said, his voice rough. Lena stood, her hands twisting in the blanket. You're bleeding. He glanced down. His knuckles were split, blood dried across his skin. It's nothing. But Lena was already moving, disappearing into the bathroom. She returned with a first aid kit, her movements quick and purposeful. Sit, she said. Cade obeyed, too surprised to argue. Lena knelt in front of him, taking his hand in hers. Her touch was gentle, careful, as she cleaned the blood away with antiseptic. She worked in silence, her brow furrowed in concentration. Cade watched her, something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Why do you care? He asked quietly. Lena paused, her fingers stilling. She looked up, her dark eyes meeting his. Because no one else does, she said simply. And in that moment, something shifted. The cage Cade had built around himself, around his heart, cracked. Just a little, but enough. Teet. The days that followed blurred together in a strange rhythm neither of them had planned for. Cade told himself it was strategy. Keep the hostage comfortable. Keep her compliant. A content prisoner was easier to manage than a desperate one. But every morning when he found fresh coffee waiting, every evening when he came home to find the penthouse softened by small touches, a vase of flowers Margot must have bought at Lena's quiet request, books stacked in thoughtful arrangements, the faint scent of something baking. He knew he was lying to himself. This wasn't strategy. This was something far more dangerous. Lena moved through his world like water finding cracks in stone, gentle and persistent, changing the landscape without asking permission. She never demanded anything, never pushed, but her presence was becoming impossible to ignore. 3 weeks in, Cade found himself adjusting his schedule. He left meetings early, took calls from home instead of the office, made excuses to Ronan that sounded hollow even to his own ears, and every time he walked through the penthouse doors, he found himself scanning the space for her. She was always there, quiet, unobtrusive, but there. One evening, he found her in the kitchen, flour dusted across her cheek, her hands working dough with practiced precision. The sight stopped him in the doorway. What are you making? He asked. Lena looked up, startled. She always looked startled when he spoke to her directly, like she couldn't quite believe he saw her. Bread. I hope that's okay. Margot said the pantry was fully stocked and I could... It's fine, Cade interrupted. He stepped into the kitchen, leaning against the counter. Where did you learn to bake? Books. She smiled faintly. There was a whole section on cooking at the estate. I read them all twice. You learned from books? Not from anyone showing you? Lena's hands stilled. There wasn't anyone to show me. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with everything she wasn't saying. Cade felt that familiar twist in his chest, the one he'd been trying to ignore for weeks. The first few loaves were terrible, Lena continued, her voice lighter now, clearly trying to move past the moment. Burned on the outside, raw in the middle. But I kept trying. Why? She looked at him, her dark eyes searching his face. Because I wanted to make something that wasn't broken. Cade's throat tightened. He understood that need more than she could possibly know. His entire empire had been built on that same desperate desire to create something solid, something that couldn't be taken away. How long until it's done? He asked. 30 minutes. I'll wait. Lena blinked. You don't have to... I'll wait, Cade repeated. So he did. He sat at the kitchen island while Lena worked, watching her move with quiet efficiency. She didn't fill the silence with nervous chatter, didn't try to entertain him. She simply existed in the space, comfortable in her own skin in a way that seemed impossible for someone who'd been invisible for so long. When the timer went off, she pulled 2 perfect loaves from the oven, golden brown and steaming. Wait 5 minutes before cutting it, she said, setting them on a cooling rack. Otherwise it falls apart. Cade watched steam rise from the bread. You're good at this. I had a lot of time to practice. 14 years. Lena nodded, her expression carefully neutral. Did anyone visit you? Cade asked. At the estate? Margot, not your Margot, a different woman, came once a month with supplies. She never stayed long. She didn't like looking at me. Why not? Lena's fingers traced the edge of the counter. I reminded her of my mother. Cade filed that away. What was your mother like? For a long moment, Lena didn't answer. Then, so quietly he almost missed it, she said, Kind. She was kind. And your father? Lena's jaw tightened. He's not kind. Is that why he sent you away? I don't know why he sent me away. She looked up, meeting Cade's gaze. He never told me. One day my mother was alive and I was part of the family. The next day she was gone and I was inconvenient. Inconvenient, Cade repeated, the word tasting like acid. That's what I heard him tell Gregor once. The girl is inconvenient, keep her out of sight. Lena's voice didn't waver. She recited the words like they were facts, data points, nothing more. So they did. Cade felt rage building in his chest. Not the cold, controlled anger he used as a weapon, but something hotter, more visceral. Marcus Voss had thrown away his own daughter like garbage, had erased her, had let her rot in isolation for 14 years, and then he'd handed her over to Cade like she was worthless. He's a fool, Cade said quietly. Lena's eyes widened slightly. What? Your father. He's a fool. Why? Because he gave me a weapon he didn't even know he had. Lena's brow furrowed. I'm not a weapon. No, Cade agreed. You're something far more dangerous. What's that? Cade held her gaze. Someone who sees everything and stays quiet. A flush crept up Lena's neck. She looked away, focusing on the bread. I should let this cool. Lena. She paused, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. Thank you, Cade said. For the bread, for the coffee, for all of it. Lena's breath caught. She nodded once, quick and uncertain, then disappeared from the kitchen like a ghost. Cade stayed, staring at the cooling bread, and wondered when exactly he'd started seeing his hostage as something more than collateral. The answer scared him more than he wanted to admit. 2 days later, everything changed. Cade was in his office, reviewing reports from his captains, when Ronan burst through the door without knocking. That alone told him something was wrong. Ronan never burst in. We've got a problem, Ronan said, his face grim. Cade set down the papers. Talk. The Voss family. They're making moves. What kind of moves? Supply chain disruptions. They're cutting off our pipeline from the east. 3 shipments intercepted in the last 48 hours. Cade's jaw clenched. That violates the truce. Technically, no. They're using third parties. Contractors we can't directly link to them. It's smart, deniable. But we know it's them. Yeah, we know. Cade leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Marcus was testing him, pushing boundaries, seeing how far he could go before Cade retaliated. And the message was clear. The girl means nothing. She won't protect you. What do you want to do? Ronan asked. Cade's eyes went cold. Double security on all remaining shipments. Redirect through the southern routes. And send a message to Marcus. Tell him we're aware of his activities, and we expect immediate cessation. That's it? No retaliation? Not yet. We respond proportionally. We don't break the truce over supply chains. Ronan nodded, though his expression said he didn't agree. What about the girl? What about her? If Marcus is pushing this hard, it means he doesn't care if she gets hurt. Maybe we should remind him she's still leverage. Cade's voice went deadly quiet. We don't touch her. Ronan's eyes widened slightly. Boss, I didn't mean... I know what you meant, and the answer is no. She's off limits. Off limits, Ronan repeated slowly. Since when? Since I said so. They stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Ronan nodded. Understood. After Ronan left, Cade sat alone in his office, staring at nothing. He'd just protected Lena, not because she was useful leverage, not because it served a strategic purpose, because the thought of using her as a weapon, of hurting her to hurt Marcus, made him feel sick. When had that happened? When had she stopped being collateral and started being something he wanted to protect? That night, he found her in the library again, sketching by lamplight. She'd drawn the penthouse, every angle, every shadow rendered in meticulous detail. You're getting better, Cade said from the doorway. Lena looked up, closing the notebook. I didn't hear you come in. You were focused. She set the notebook aside. Did you need something? Cade crossed the room, settling into the chair across from her. Your family is causing problems. Lena's expression didn't change. What kind of problems? They're interfering with my business, testing boundaries. They want to see if you'll retaliate. Yes. Lena's gaze dropped to her hands. And if you do, I'm the one who pays. I'm not going to retaliate. Her head snapped up, surprise flickering across her face. Why not? Because that's what they expect, and I don't do what people expect. Lena studied him, her dark eyes searching. You could send me back, use me to send a message. I could. But you won't. No. Why not? Cade leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Because you're not a message. You're a person. Lena's breath caught. For a long moment, she just stared at him, like she couldn't quite process what he'd said. No one's ever said that to me before, she whispered. Cade's chest tightened. Then everyone you've known has been an idiot. A small, genuine smile crossed Lena's face. It transformed her, made her look younger, lighter, like the girl she might have been if the world hadn't broken her first. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For seeing me. Cade didn't trust himself to respond. So he just nodded, and they sat together in the quiet library, the city glittering beyond the windows, two broken people finding something unexpected in the ruins. The attacks escalated. Over the next week, 3 more shipments were hit. A warehouse burned. 2 of Cade's men were hospitalized after an ambush that had Marcus Voss's fingerprints all over it. Cade's captains were getting restless. They wanted blood, wanted retaliation. We look weak, one of them, a man named Victor, with a scar down his face and zero patience, snarled during a meeting. Every day we don't hit back, we lose respect. We lose more if we break the truce, Cade said coldly. The truce is already broken. Marcus is wiping his feet on us. Then we respond strategically. We tighten our defenses. We cut off his revenue streams without direct confrontation. That's not enough. Cade's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. Are you questioning my leadership? Victor went pale. No, boss, Then do what I tell you, or find another organization to work for. The room went silent. The meeting ended shortly after, the captains filing out with barely controlled frustration. Only Ronan stayed behind. They're not wrong, Ronan said quietly. We do look weak. I know. So why aren't we hitting back? Cade's jaw clenched. Because I won't give Marcus what he wants, which is An excuse to kill his daughter and blame it on me. Ronan's eyes widened. You think that's his play? I know it is. He sends her here as a disposable pawn. He provokes us into breaking the truce. We retaliate, she gets caught in the crossfire, and suddenly Marcus has justification for all-out war. He looks like the victim. We look like monsters who killed an innocent girl. That's twisted. That's Marcus Voss. Ronan was quiet for a moment. Then carefully he said, You care about her. It wasn't a question. Cade didn't answer. Boss, if you're compromised, I'm not compromised. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in months. This isn't about emotion. This is about not walking into an obvious trap. Okay. Ronan held up his hands. Okay. So, what's the move? We wait, we defend, we don't give Marcus the war he wants. And if he keeps pushing, then we push back in ways he doesn't expect. That night, Cade came home to find Lena in the kitchen again. But this time she wasn't cooking. She was sitting at the island, her head in her hands, shoulders shaking. Cade's heart stopped. Lena? She looked up, her face streaked with tears. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I'll go. Wait. Cade crossed the room in 3 strides. What happened? Nothing. I'm fine. You're crying. I'm fine, she repeated, but her voice broke on the words. Cade did something he never did. He touched her. His hand settled on her shoulder, gentle and uncertain. Talk to me, he said quietly. Lena's breath hitched. Margot showed me the news. There was a fire at one of your warehouses. People were hurt. I know. It's my fault. Cade's hand tightened on her shoulder. No, it's not. Yes, it is. My father is doing this because of me, because I'm here. People are getting hurt because... Stop! Cade's voice was firm. This isn't your fault. Your father is doing this because he's a manipulative bastard who uses people as weapons. You didn't ask to be here. You didn't ask for any of this. But I'm still the reason. You're not the reason. You're the excuse. There's a difference. Lena stared at him, tears still streaming down her face. I don't understand. Cade pulled out the chair beside her and sat down. Your father was always going to test me, always going to push boundaries. You being here just gave him a convenient cover story. If it wasn't you, it would be something else. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because that's what men like Marcus do. They create chaos and then blame everyone but themselves. Lena wiped at her eyes with shaking hands. I hate him. The words were so quiet, so raw, that Cade almost missed them. Good, he said. You should. I've never said that out loud before. Why not? Because hating him meant admitting he hurt me. And if I admitted that, I'd have to feel it. And if I felt it... She trailed off, her voice breaking. You'd fall apart, Cade finished. Lena nodded, fresh tears spilling over. Cade did something he'd never done before. He pulled her into his arms. She stiffened at first, shocked, but then she collapsed against him, her face pressed to his chest, her whole body shaking with sobs she'd clearly been holding back for years. Cade held her. Didn't say anything, didn't try to fix it. Just held her while she broke, and for the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to want to destroy someone, not for power, not for strategy, but for simple burning rage. Marcus Voss had done this, had broken his own daughter so thoroughly that she didn't even know she was allowed to cry, and Cade was going to make him pay. When Lena finally pulled back, her face was red and blotchy, her eyes swollen. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be. I got your shirt wet. I don't care, Lena laughed, a broken, watery sound. You're supposed to be a terrifying mafia boss, not someone who lets hostages cry on him. You're not a hostage anymore. The words slipped out before Cade could stop them. Lena froze. What? Cade met her gaze steady and sure. You're not a hostage. You're under my protection. There's a difference. I don't understand. You will. Over the next 2 weeks, something shifted. Cade stopped pretending Lena was just collateral. He started including her in his life. Not the violent parts, never that, but the quiet moments in between. He brought her books from the private collection in his office. She devoured them, then left thoughtful notes in the margins that made him smile despite himself. He asked her opinion on things. What color should the new office furniture be? Which route through the city was faster? Inconsequential things that somehow felt monumental because no one had ever asked her opinion on anything before. She started joining him for dinner. Not every night, but often enough that he noticed when she wasn't there. They talked about books, about the city, about music and art, and all the things Lena had only experienced through pages and screens. She asked questions with the hunger of someone who'd been starved for conversation, and Cade found himself answering with a patience he didn't know he possessed. "What's your favorite place in the city?" she asked one evening. Cade considered. "The old pier, South Side. It's abandoned now, but when I was a kid, my brother and I used to sneak out there and watch the ships come in." "You have a brother?" "Had." Cade's voice went flat. "He died when I was 17. Lena's hand found his across the table. "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago." "That doesn't make it hurt less." Cade looked down at their joined hands. Her fingers were small, delicate, but her grip was surprisingly strong. "No," he agreed quietly. "It doesn't." They sat in silence, her hand in his, and Cade felt something crack open inside him, something he'd sealed shut the day his brother died. The day he'd decided feeling anything was a weakness he couldn't afford. But with Lena, it didn't feel like weakness. It felt like coming home. The night everything changed started like any other. Cade was in his office, reviewing contracts, when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. But something, instinct, paranoia, the universe intervening, made him pick up. "Thorne," he said curtly. "Mr. Thorne." The voice was smooth, cultured, unfamiliar. "We haven't been formally introduced. My name is Dante Calabrese." Cade's blood ran cold. Dante Calabrese. Head of the Calabrese family, one of the oldest and most powerful syndicates on the eastern seaboard. They operated in different territories, maintained a careful détente, but everyone knew the Calabreses were ruthless, calculating, and very, very dangerous. "What do you want?" Cade asked. "Straight to business. I like that." Dante's voice carried a hint of amusement. "I'm calling about the girl you're keeping, Lena Voss." Every muscle in Cade's body went tense. "What about her?" "She's not who you think she is." "Explain." "Not over the phone. Meet me tomorrow, noon, the marina. Come alone." "And if I don't?" "Then you'll remain ignorant about the very valuable asset sleeping under your roof." "Your choice, Mr. Thorne. But I suggest you come. What I have to tell you, it changes everything." The line went dead. Cade sat frozen, his mind racing. How did Calabrese know about Lena? Why did he care? And what the hell did he mean by "not who you think she is"? Cade found her in the library, as always, sketching by lamplight. "Lena," he said carefully, "I need to ask you something." She looked up, sensing the tension in his voice. "Okay. Do you know anyone named Dante Calabrese?" Lena's face went white. The sketchbook slipped from her hands. "How do you know that name?" she whispered. Cade's heart pounded. "He called me. About you. Lena, what aren't you telling me?" Lena stood, her whole body trembling. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know until—" She stopped, pressing her hands to her face. "I found letters. At the estate. Hidden in my mother's things." "What letters?" "Letters from Dante Calabrese. To my mother. They were—" She took a shaking breath. "They were love letters. From before she married my father." Cade's mind spun. "Your mother and Calabrese were together?" "More than that." Lena looked up, tears streaming down her face. "The letters said, they said, I'm not Marcus Voss's daughter. They said I'm Dante's." The world tilted. Lena wasn't a Voss, she was a Calabrese. And if that was true, if Marcus had known, if he'd raised another man's child out of spite, or strategy, or some twisted game, everything made horrible, perfect sense. Why Marcus had hidden her, why he'd sent her away after her mother died, why he'd handed her over like she was nothing. Because to him, she was nothing. She was a living reminder of his wife's betrayal. "Does Calabrese know?" Cade asked, his voice rough. "I don't know. The letters stopped before I was born. I don't know if my mother ever told him. I don't know if he even knows I exist." "He knows now." Lena's face crumpled. "What's going to happen?" Cade crossed the room, pulling her into his arms. "Nothing. Nothing is going to happen to you." But if he wants, I don't care what he wants. You're under my protection. That doesn't change. Cade, no. He pulled back, gripping her shoulders. Listen to me. I don't care who your father is. I don't care what family you belong to. You're staying here. With me. Where you're safe. Why? Lena searched his face. Why does it matter to you? Cade's jaw clenched. He could lie. Should lie. But looking into her eyes, seeing the fear and hope and desperate need for someone to choose her, he couldn't. Because somewhere along the way, he said quietly, you stopped being a hostage and started being mine. Lena's breath caught. Yours? Mine to protect. Mine to keep safe. Mine. That's not how this was supposed to work. I know. You're supposed to be my captor. I'm supposed to be your prisoner. I know. So why does this feel like something else? Cade's hand came up, cupping her face. Because it is something else. Lena leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed. What do we do? Tomorrow, I meet with Calabrese. I find out what he wants. And then I make sure he understands that you're off limits. And if he doesn't accept that, Cade's voice went deadly cold. Then he'll learn what happens when someone tries to take what's mine. That night, neither of them slept. Cade stood at the windows, watching the city, his mind racing through scenarios and strategies. Lena sat curled on the couch, sketching nothing, just moving her pencil in aimless patterns. At 3 a.m., she finally spoke. I'm scared. Cade turned. I know. I've been invisible my whole life, and now suddenly everyone wants me. My father, Calabrese, you. She looked up, her eyes haunted. Why now? What changed? You changed, Cade said. You stopped being invisible. You started being seen. I don't want to be seen. I want to be safe. Cade crossed the room, kneeling in front of her. You are safe. I promise you. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever Calabrese wants, you're safe. You can't promise that. Yes, I can, because I won't let anyone hurt you. Not Marcus, not Calabrese, not anyone. Lena's hand came up, her fingers brushing his jaw. You're a good man, Cade Thorne. Cade's throat tightened. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. You just don't know it yet. And then, before either of them could think better of it, Lena leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle, tentative, a question more than a demand. Cade froze for half a heartbeat. Then he was kissing her back, his hand sliding into her hair, pulling her closer. She tasted like hope and fear and something indefinable that made his chest ache. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Lena whispered, I shouldn't have done that. Probably not, Cade agreed. Are you angry? No. Then what are you? Cade rested his forehead against hers. Terrified. Of what? Of how much I want to keep you. Lena's breath hitched. Then keep me. Lena, keep me, Cade. I don't care about the cage. I don't care about the rules. Just keep me. Cade pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. And for the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to have something worth losing. Morning came too fast. Cade stood in his bedroom, buttoning a fresh shirt with mechanical precision, while his mind calculated every possible angle of the meeting ahead. Lena had finally fallen asleep on the couch around 4 a.m., exhausted from fear and tears, and he'd carried her to the guest room without waking her. The memory of her weight in his arms, the trust implicit in her unconscious surrender, made his chest tighten. He couldn't afford that feeling. Not today. Today required the ice-cold calculation that had built his empire, not the dangerous warmth that had been growing in his chest every time he looked at her. Ronan was waiting in the kitchen, 2 cups of coffee already poured. You sure about this? Ronan asked, handing him one. No, Cade said honestly, but we don't have a choice. We always have a choice. You could tell Calabrese to go to hell and start a war with one of the most powerful families on the East Coast, while Marcus is already testing us? Cade shook his head. We need information first, then we decide. And if he wants the girl? Cade's voice went deadly quiet. Then he doesn't get her. Ronan studied him for a long moment. Boss, I've known you for 12 years. I've never seen you like this. Like what? Compromised. I'm not... Yes, you are. Ronan's voice was gentle but firm. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But you need to know what you're walking into. If Calabrese is her biological father, he has a claim, legal, moral, whatever. And if he pushes it, let him push. Cade set down his coffee with controlled force. She's not going anywhere. Even if she wants to? The question hung in the air like smoke. Cade hadn't considered that possibility. That Lena might choose to leave. That she might want a real father instead of a captor who'd developed inconvenient feelings. She won't, he said, but the words felt hollow. You don't know that. I know she's terrified. I know she trusts me. That's enough. For now, Ronan said quietly. But what about when she's not terrified anymore? What about when she has options? Cade didn't answer. He couldn't, because Ronan was right, and they both knew it. The marina at noon was exactly the kind of place powerful men chose for dangerous conversations. Public enough to discourage violence, private enough for brutal honesty. Cade arrived 10 minutes early, scanning the restaurant's outdoor seating area with practiced efficiency. Private tables overlooking the water. Multiple exits. Clear sight lines. Dante Calabrese was already there. He sat at a corner table, dressed in an impeccably tailored navy suit, silver hair swept back from a face that radiated old-world elegance and modern ruthlessness. He looked to be in his mid-50s, handsome in the way that came from good genes and better money. When he saw Cade, he smiled, warm and utterly terrifying. Mr. Thorne, thank you for coming. Dante gestured to the seat across from him. Please. Cade sat, keeping his movements controlled. Let's skip the pleasantries. What do you want? Dante's smile widened. Direct. I respect that. Very well. He pulled a photograph from his jacket and slid it across the table. Cade looked down and felt his world tilt. It was a picture of a woman, beautiful, dark-haired, with familiar eyes that held warmth and sadness in equal measure. She was young in the photo, maybe 25, laughing at something off-camera. Isabella Voss, Dante said softly. Formerly Isabella Moretti, the love of my life, and the mother of my daughter. Cade's jaw clenched. Lena. Yes. Dante's expression shifted, something raw and painful flickering across his features. I didn't know. For 22 years, I didn't know I had a daughter. How is that possible? Because Isabella never told me. Dante's voice carried the weight of old grief. We were together for 3 years. I wanted to marry her, build a life. But her family had other plans. They arranged a marriage to Marcus Voss, a union that would strengthen both families. Isabella refused at first, but they gave her an ultimatum. Marry Marcus or I would die. Cade's eyes narrowed. They threatened you. More than threatened. They made it very clear that if Isabella didn't comply, I would be found in pieces scattered across the harbor. Dante's smile turned bitter. So she married him, broke things off with me completely. Told me she'd never loved me, that I'd been a distraction, nothing more. I was young enough, stupid enough to believe her. But she did love you. Yes, I found that out 2 months ago when my people intercepted a package being sent from Marcus Voss to a competitor. Inside were letters. Love letters Isabella had written to me but never sent. Letters she'd hidden away for over 2 decades. Letters that mentioned our daughter. Cade felt cold understanding crystallize. Marcus found them. Us after Isabella died. He must have been going through her things and discovered the truth, that the child he'd been raising wasn't his, that his wife had loved another man until her dying day. Dante's hands clenched on the table. Can you imagine his rage? Cade could. More than that, he could understand it. Marcus Voss had spent 8 years raising another man's child, believing she was his. And when he'd discovered the truth, he'd done what men like Marcus always did. He'd punished the innocent party. He'd thrown Lena away like garbage. Why come to me now, see? Cade asked. Why not go directly to Marcus? Because Marcus doesn't know that I know, and I want to keep it that way until I have all my pieces in position. Dante leaned forward. But I needed to ensure my daughter was safe first. When I learned he'd handed her over to you as collateral, I had to know what kind of man was keeping her. And what did you find? A man with a reputation for ruthlessness, A man who built an empire from nothing and defended it with brutal efficiency. A man who doesn't make emotional decisions. Dante's eyes glittered. But also a man who hasn't hurt her, who's kept her safe, who's protected her even when it would have been strategically smarter to use her as leverage. Cade's expression remained neutral. What do you want, Calabrese? I want my daughter back. The words hit like a physical blow. Cade forced himself to stay calm, to think through the implications. She doesn't know you. I'm aware. She's terrified, fragile. She's been through hell. Because of Marcus Voss. Because of the family that should have protected her. Dante's voice hardened. I can give her everything he denied her, safety, legitimacy, a real family. She has safety now. With you? A mafia boss who took her as a hostage? Dante shook his head. I'm not judging, Thorne. I understand the game we're all playing, but you and I both know this isn't a permanent solution. Eventually, this truce will end. Eventually, Marcus will make a move. And when he does, Lena will be caught in the crossfire. Not if I protect her. You can't protect her from everything, but I can. As a Calabrese, she's untouchable. Marcus wouldn't dare move against her. No one would. Cade's mind raced. Dante was right. From a strategic standpoint, Lena would be safer with her biological father's protection. The Calabrese name carried weight that even Marcus Voss respected. She would have resources, security, a real life beyond the gilded cage of Cade's penthouse. But the thought of letting her go made him feel like he was being torn apart from the inside. I need time, Cade said finally. For what? To tell her, to let her decide. Dante's eyebrows rose. You'd give her a choice? Yes. Even if she chooses to leave? Cade's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Yes. For a long moment, Dante studied him. Then something shifted in his expression, surprise giving way to something that looked almost like respect. You care about her, Dante said quietly. Cade didn't answer, couldn't. I see. Dante sat back, a slight smile playing at his lips. Well, that does complicate things. Does it change your position? No, she's my daughter. I want her in my life, but... Dante paused, choosing his words carefully. I'm not Marcus Voss. I don't force people into cages. If Lena chooses to stay with you, I'll respect that. But she deserves to know the truth. All of it. And she deserves to make an informed choice about her future. Agreed. Then we understand each other. Dante stood, buttoning his jacket. I'll give you 48 hours. Tell her everything. Let her decide. And then I want to meet her, regardless of what she chooses. Cade stood as well. And Marcus? Let me worry about Marcus. I've been planning his downfall for 2 months. The man destroyed the woman I loved and tortured my child. He'll pay for that. But I'll do it on my terms, in my time. Dante's smile turned predatory. All I ask is that you don't get in my way. As long as Lena stays safe, you have my word. They shook hands, an agreement between two predators who'd found unexpected common ground. As Cade walked away, his phone buzzed. A text from Ronan. We have a problem. Get back here now. The drive back to the penthouse took 15 minutes that felt like hours. Cade's mind spun with everything Dante had told him, with the impossible choice he now had to lay before Lena, with the terrifying possibility that she might choose to leave. But when he walked into the penthouse, all of that evaporated. The place was in chaos, furniture overturned, glass shattered across the marble floor, and Ronan standing in the foyer with blood dripping from a cut above his eye, his gun drawn. What happened? Cade demanded. They took her, Ronan said, his voice tight with fury and guilt. I'm sorry, boss. They came out of nowhere. 6 men, professional crew. They had the place cased perfectly, knew exactly where the cameras were, where the weak points were. They were in and out in under 3 minutes. Cade's blood ran cold. Who took her? I don't know. They wore masks. But boss, Ronan held out a piece of paper. They left this. Cade snatched the note, his hand shaking with barely controlled rage. The message was simple, written in elegant script. Your truce is over. Come to the Voss estate tonight at midnight. Come alone. Bring weapons if you like. You'll need them. If you want the girl back, you'll have to go through me to get her. MV Marcus Voss. The bastard had taken her. When? Cade's voice was deadly quiet. 20 minutes ago. I've already got our people moving, trying to track the vehicles, but they scattered in 6 different directions. It was coordinated, boss. They planned this. Cade's mind raced through possibilities, scenarios, strategies. Marcus had taken Lena. Why now? What had changed? Unless someone had told him about Calabrese. Unless Marcus had learned that his greatest shame, the daughter who wasn't his, the living reminder of his wife's betrayal, was about to be claimed by his old rival. And Marcus, being Marcus, had decided to eliminate the problem permanently. "Get everyone," Cade said, his voice cold as winter. "Every soldier we have, every weapon, every resource." "Boss, the note said come alone." "I don't care what the note said. Marcus wants a war, he's got one." Cade pulled out his phone, scrolling to Dante's number. And he's about to learn what happens when he takes something that doesn't belong to him. "What are you going to do?" Cade's smile was terrible to behold. "I'm going to burn his world to the ground." The call to Dante was brief. "They took her," Cade said without preamble. "Who?" "Marcus. He has her at the Voss estate. I'm going to get her back." A pause. Then quietly, "I'm coming with you." "This isn't your fight." "The hell it isn't. That's my daughter." Dante's voice hardened. "I'll have 20 men at your location in 30 minutes. And Thorn?" "Marcus Voss has been a thorn in my side for 20 years. It's time to remove him permanently." "Agreed." Cade hung up and turned to find his entire team assembled in the penthouse. 15 of his best soldiers, armed and ready, their faces grim. Victor stepped forward. "We're with you, boss. All of us." "This is going to get bloody," Cade warned. "Good," Victor said simply. "That bastard has been pushing us for weeks. Time to push back." Cade nodded. He moved through the penthouse, gathering weapons, body armor, everything he'd need for the assault. His mind was clear now, focused. All the warmth he'd felt over the past weeks crystallized into something harder and more dangerous. Marcus had made a fatal mistake. He'd taken the one thing Cade cared about, and for that, he was going to die. As Cade loaded rounds into a magazine, Ronan appeared at his shoulder. "Boss, there's something else." "What?" "One of Marcus's men, the one I managed to shoot before they got away, he talked before he died. Said Marcus has been planning this for a week. Said someone on our side fed him information about your schedule, your security patterns, everything." Cade's blood ran cold. "We have a traitor." "Yeah, and boss, he said it was someone close to you, someone you trust." Cade's mind raced through his inner circle. Ronan, no, impossible. Victor, loyal for 10 years. Margot, she'd been with him since the beginning. Unless... A sick feeling twisted in his gut. There was one person who'd had access to everything. One person who'd been in the penthouse every day, who'd seen his routines, his vulnerabilities. One person who had every reason to want him destroyed. "Where's Margot?" Cade asked quietly. Ronan's face went pale. I don't know. I haven't seen her since before the attack." Cade moved through the penthouse, searching. He found Margot's room empty, her closet cleaned out, her personal items gone. On the bed was a single envelope addressed to him. Inside was a letter, written in Margot's precise handwriting. "Mr. Thorne, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I'm sorry. Not for betraying you. You deserve everything that's coming, but for not having the courage to face you. You took everything from me 10 years ago. My husband worked for the Callahan family. He was killed in the crossfire when you destroyed them to build your empire. You don't even remember him, do you? He was just another casualty in your rise to power. I've waited a decade for the right moment to make you pay. When Marcus Voss approached me 3 months ago with his plan, I knew it was time. He wanted information. I gave it to him. He wanted access to your security. I provided it. And when he wanted the girl, I made sure it would be easy. I thought destroying you would make me feel better. But watching you change over these past weeks, watching you care about her the way you never cared about the people you destroyed, I realized something. You're capable of love. You just choose not to give it to people like my husband. Like me. That makes what's about to happen almost poetic. Marcus is going to kill her, tonight, in front of you. And you're going to know what it feels like to lose someone you love. I hope it destroys you the way you destroyed me." Cade read the letter twice. his hands shaking with rage so pure it felt like ice in his veins. Margot, the woman who'd run his household for a decade, who'd been there through everything, who'd smiled at Lena and helped her settle in. She'd sold them out. She'd handed Lena to Marcus like a lamb to slaughter, and she'd done it for revenge. Cade crumpled the letter in his fist. He understood revenge. Hell, he'd built an empire on it, but using an innocent girl as a weapon, that was unforgivable. Boss? Ronan appeared in the doorway. Margot was the traitor, Cade said flatly. She's been working with Marcus for months. Ronan's face went white. I'll find her. I'll make her… No, let her run. She doesn't matter anymore. Cade's voice was deadly calm. The only thing that matters is getting Lena back. What if we're too late? We won't be. Cade met Ronan's eyes. Because I'm not losing her. I don't care what it costs. I don't care how many people I have to go through. I'm bringing her home. Dante arrived exactly 30 minutes later with a convoy of black SUVs and enough firepower to start a small war. He stepped out of the lead vehicle dressed in tactical gear that somehow still looked elegant, his silver hair the only thing that betrayed his age. Status? He demanded. We move in 1 hour, Cade said. Hit the estate from 3 sides simultaneously. Overwhelm their defenses before they can mount an effective response. And if Marcus kills her before we get there? Then we make sure he dies slowly. Dante's smile was cold and approving. I like the way you think, Thorn. They spent the next hour planning, coordinating, preparing for the assault. Cade's team and Dante's merged seamlessly. Both groups were professionals. Both understood the stakes. But as the minutes ticked down, Cade found himself standing alone at the penthouse windows, staring out at the city and thinking about Lena. The way she'd looked sketching in the library, the warmth in her eyes when she'd thanked him for seeing her, the trust in her voice when she'd asked him to keep her, the taste of her kiss. He'd spent his entire adult life building walls, protecting himself from feeling anything that could be used against him. And in less than 6 weeks, Lena had walked through every defense like they were made of paper. She'd made him feel human again, and he was going to get her back or die trying. Boss, Ronan appeared at his shoulder. It's time. Cade nodded. He turned away from the window, his face settling into the cold mask he'd perfected over years of violence and survival. Cade Thorn was going to war, and Marcus Voss was going to learn that some cages, once opened, could never be closed again. The Voss estate sat on 50 acres of manicured grounds outside the city, a sprawling mansion that screamed old money and older sins. Cade had been here once before, years ago, for a negotiation that had ended in threats and barely controlled violence. Tonight would end differently. The convoy rolled to a stop half a mile out, hidden in a grove of trees. Cade stepped out, checking his weapons one final time. Dante moved beside him, his face grim. 3 minutes to breach, Dante said quietly. My men will take the east wing. Yours take the west. We converge in the center. And if we encounter resistance, put them down. No mercy. Not tonight. Cade nodded. He turned to his team, their faces illuminated by the dim glow of tactical lights. You all know the plan. Get in, find the girl, get out. Anyone who stands in your way goes down. This isn't a negotiation. This is a rescue. Move fast, move smart, and watch each other's backs. Yes, sir, they chorused. The approach was silent, years of training evident in every step as 40 men moved through the darkness like ghosts. Cade's heart pounded against his ribs, but his hands were steady. Everything he'd built, everything he'd become, had led to this moment. They reached the perimeter wall. Victor pulled out cutting tools, making quick work of the security fence. Alarms would trip, but by then they'd be inside. 3, 2, 1. The estate exploded into chaos. Cade's team poured through the breach, weapons raised, moving with deadly precision. Lights blazed to life. Shouts echoed through the night. And then gunfire, sharp and brutal and final. Marcus's security force had been waiting, but they'd underestimated the fury of 2 mafia families united in purpose. The first wave went down in seconds. The second lasted barely longer. Cade moved through the carnage like death itself, his gun barking twice, 3 times, each shot finding its mark. A man appeared in a doorway, down, another on the stairs. Down. He didn't hesitate, didn't think, just moved forward with single-minded determination. Find Lena. The center of the mansion was a grand ballroom, all marble and gold and obscene wealth. And there, in the middle of it all, stood Marcus Voss. He held a gun to Lena's head. She was alive, bruised, terrified, her hands bound in front of her, but alive. When she saw Cade, something broke across her face. Relief, hope, fear. "Cade," she whispered. "Hello, Thorne," Marcus said pleasantly, as if they'd met for tea instead of a bloodbath. "Right on time. I do appreciate punctuality." Cade raised his gun, aiming directly at Marcus's head. "Let her go." "Or what? You'll shoot?" "I don't think so. Not when my finger's on the trigger. The slightest pressure and her brains paint this lovely marble floor." "You're going to die tonight, Marcus. The only question is whether it's quick or slow." Marcus laughed. Bold words from a man in no position to negotiate. "But then, you always were arrogant, just like your brother." Cade's jaw clenched. "Leave him out of this." "Why?" "He's relevant. You see, I knew your brother, worked with him briefly before you killed him yourself." "I didn't kill him." "Didn't you? Your ambition, your ruthlessness, your need to be on top, it consumed everyone around you, including family." Marcus's smile widened. "But we're not here to discuss your failures. We're here to discuss mine." He jerked his head toward Lena. "This broken thing, this reminder of my wife's betrayal. Did you know Isabella begged me to love her? Actually begged. Pathetic." "You're the pathetic one," Cade said coldly, "punishing a child for her mother's choices." "She's not a child. She's a bastard, a cuckoo in my nest." Marcus pressed the gun harder against Lena's temple, making her whimper. "But she served one final purpose. She drew you out, made you weak, made you care. And now I'm going to take everything from you the way you and Calabrese took everything from me." "You took from yourself," a new voice said. Dante stepped into the ballroom, his gun trained on Marcus. "You took a woman who didn't love you and forced her into a cage. You destroyed her spirit year by year until she was just a shell, and when she died, you punished her daughter for existing." Marcus's face went white. "Calabrese." "Hello, Marcus. Surprised to see me." "How did you know about Isabella? About Lena?" Dante's smile was terrible. "I have resources you can't imagine, and I've been waiting 20 years for this moment." Marcus's hand shook on the gun. "She was mine. Isabella was mine. She was never yours. She loved me until her dying breath. You were just the man who kept her prisoner. And you're any different? You're here to claim your bastard daughter like she's property?" "I'm here to give her a choice," Dante said quietly. "Something you never gave Isabella. Something you never gave Lena. A choice." During this exchange, Cade had been moving. Small steps, subtle shifts, closing the distance. Now he was 15 feet away. Close enough? Marcus's eyes flicked to him. "Don't." "You made a mistake," Cade said softly. "You assumed I cared about strategy more than I care about her. You were wrong. If you move, she dies." Cade fired. The shot was perfect. Through Marcus's shoulder, severing muscle and bone. The gun flew from his hand. Lena screamed, and Cade was moving, crossing the space in 2 strides, catching her as she stumbled forward. "I've got you," he breathed against her hair. "I've got you." Marcus fell to his knees, clutching his ruined shoulder, blood pouring between his fingers. You shot me!" "That was the mercy round," Cade said coldly. He handed Lena to Dante, who'd appeared at his side. "Get her out of here." "Cade," Lena started. "I'll be right behind you. I promise." Dante met his eyes, understanding passing between them. Then he led Lena away, her sobs echoing through the ballroom as she looked back at Cade one last time. When they were gone, Cade approached Marcus, who was now sprawled on the marble, gasping in pain. "You destroyed her," Cade said quietly. "An innocent girl. You threw her away like garbage because of your pride. She wasn't mine. She was a child, your wife's child, and you tortured her for being born." Cade's voice dropped to a whisper. "That ends tonight. You're going to kill me." "No." Cade stepped back. "I'm going to let you live. Broken, ruined, A reminder to everyone what happens when you hurt someone I care about. He turned to leave, but Marcus's voice stopped him. She'll leave you, Marcus spat. The girl. She'll choose Calabrese, real family, real power, and you'll be alone again, just like you've always been. The words hit harder than they should have, because part of Cade feared he was right, but he didn't let it show. Maybe, Cade said, but she'll make that choice free, not in a cage, not like your wife. He walked away, leaving Marcus bleeding on the floor, and stepped out into the night where Lena waited, alive, safe, and finally free. Outside the mansion, the night air was thick with smoke and the metallic tang of blood. Bodies littered the manicured lawns. Marcus's security force, men who'd made the fatal mistake of standing between two enraged mafia families and their objective. Cade's team was already moving through the grounds, securing the perimeter, ensuring no one escaped to carry tales or seek revenge. Lena stood beside one of the SUVs, wrapped in Dante's jacket, her whole body trembling. When she saw Cade emerge from the mansion, alive and whole, something broke inside her. She ran to him, her bound hands making her stumble, but she didn't care. Cade caught her, steadying her against his chest. His hands moved immediately to the zip ties around her wrists, snapping them with a sharp twist that made her gasp. Are you hurt? His voice was rough, his hands moving over her arms, her face, checking for injuries with a gentleness that contradicted the violence still smoking from his gun. I'm okay, Lena whispered, but her voice shook. Cade, I thought, when they took me, I thought I'd never see you again. I told you I'd keep you safe. His forehead pressed against hers, his eyes closing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Margot, I know, she told me. Before Marcus, Lena's voice broke. She said you destroyed her husband, that you deserved to lose everything. She was right. Lena pulled back, her eyes searching his face. What? 10 years ago, I went to war with the Callahan family. A lot of people died. Her husband was one of them. Cade's jaw clenched. I didn't know she was connected. Didn't know she'd been waiting all this time for revenge, but she wasn't wrong. I did destroy her life. You didn't know. That doesn't matter. The damage was still done. He cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. But I swear to you, Lena, I will never let anyone hurt you again. Never. You can't promise that. Watch me. Dante approached, his expression carefully neutral. We need to move. Marcus's allies will have heard the gunfire. We have maybe 20 minutes before reinforcements arrive. Cade nodded, but he didn't let go of Lena. Get everyone out. I'll meet you at the secondary location. Boss, Ronan started. That's an order. Ronan's eyes flicked between Cade and Lena, understanding dawning. Yes, sir. The teams began loading into vehicles, engines roaring to life, but Dante remained, his gaze fixed on Lena with an intensity that made her shift uncomfortably. Lena, he said quietly, we need to talk. Not now, Cade said sharply. Yes, now, because in about 15 minutes, half the city's underworld is going to descend on this location, and I need to know where my daughter stands before that happens. Lena's breath caught. You're... What? Dante's expression softened. I'm your father, your biological father. Isabella, your mother. She and I were together before she married Marcus. You're mine, Lena. You always have been. The world tilted beneath Lena's feet. She looked at Cade, desperate for him to tell her this was a lie, a trick, anything but the truth. But his face was grim and resigned. It's true, Cade said quietly. I met with him this morning. He has proof, letters from your mother, DNA evidence. You're a Calabrese. Lena felt like she was drowning. Her whole life had been a lie. Marcus wasn't her father, the man who'd thrown her away, who'd locked her up for 14 years, who'd just tried to kill her. He'd never been her father at all. I don't understand, she whispered. Why didn't she tell you? Why didn't my mother... Because my family threatened my life if she didn't comply with their arranged marriage to Marcus, Dante said, his voice heavy with old pain. She sacrificed our future to keep me alive, and I never knew. I never knew I had a daughter until 2 months ago. 2 months? Lena's voice rose. You've known for 2 months and you never... I was gathering evidence, building a case, making sure I could protect you before I revealed myself. Dante took a step forward. Lena, I know this is overwhelming. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I'm here now, and I want to give you everything you've been denied. Safety, family, a real life. I have a life. With him? Dante's gaze flicked to Cade. With the man who took you as a hostage? Who kept you in a cage? He protected me, Lena said fiercely, when no one else did. When you didn't. Because I didn't know you existed. And whose fault is that? You said my mother loved you. If she loved you so much, why didn't she find a way to tell you? Why didn't she fight? Dante's face crumpled. Because I wasn't worth dying for. That's what she must have believed. The pain in his voice was so raw that Lena felt her anger deflate. This man, this stranger who claimed to be her father, had lost the woman he loved and the daughter he'd never known. And he was standing here in the aftermath of a massacre, offering her a family she'd never had. But when she looked at Cade, when she saw the carefully controlled fear in his eyes, the terror that she might leave him, she knew where she belonged. I'm sorry, she said softly to Dante. I'm sorry for everything you lost, but I can't. I'm not ready to... I understand. Dante's smile was sad but genuine. I'm not asking you to choose right now. I'm just asking for a chance. To know you. To be part of your life, however you'll let me. I don't know if I can do that. Then take time. Think about it. I'll wait. He pulled a card from his pocket, pressing it into her hand. My private number. Call me when you're ready, or don't. But know that you always have a place with me, Lena. Always. He turned to Cade. Take care of her, Thorn. Or you'll answer to me. I don't take threats well, Cade said coldly. It's not a threat. It's a promise from a father. Dante's eyes hardened. She's all I have left of Isabella. If anything happens to her, nothing will happen to her. You have my word. They stared at each other for a long moment, two apex predators circling, assessing. Then Dante nodded and walked away, climbing into his SUV. Within seconds, the convoy was gone, leaving only Cade and Lena standing in the blood-soaked aftermath. We need to go, Cade said quietly. But Lena didn't move. She was staring at the mansion, at the place where she'd been held captive, where Marcus had pressed a gun to her head and told her she was worthless. He's still alive, she said. Yes. Why? Why didn't you kill him? Cade's expression was unreadable. Because death would have been mercy, and he doesn't deserve mercy. What does he deserve? To live knowing he lost everything, his power, his reputation, the daughter he threw away. Cade's voice dropped. He'll spend the rest of his life broken and alone, watching his empire crumble. That's a worse punishment than any bullet could deliver. Lena turned to face him. What happens now? Now we disappear. At least for a while. Let the dust settle. Let the other families understand what happens when someone takes what's mine. And then? And then we decide what comes next. Together. The word hung between them. Together. A promise. A future. Something Lena had never dared to hope for. I don't want to go with Dante, she said quietly. Cade's breath released in a rush. You don't have to. I know. But I need you to understand why. She took his hands, her fingers intertwining with his. He's offering me family. Legitimacy. Everything I never had growing up. And part of me wants that so badly it hurts. Then why? Because none of it matters if I'm not with you. Lena's voice shook. You saw me when I was invisible. You made me feel human when I thought I was a ghost. You came for me when you could have walked away. That's not a cage, Cade. That's love. And I'm not letting that go. Cade pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her like he could shield her from the whole world. You're sure? Because once we do this, once we choose each other, I'm sure. There's no going back. I don't want to go back. I want to go forward with you. Cade kissed her then, hard and desperate and full of everything he'd been too afraid to say. And Lena kissed him back, tasting blood and smoke, and the promise of a future they'd build together from the ashes of their pasts. When they finally pulled apart, sirens were wailing in the distance. Time to go, Cade said. They climbed into the last remaining SUV. Cade took the wheel, and they drove away from the Voss estate, leaving behind the wreckage of Marcus's world and the ghosts of everything they'd both survived. The safe house was a cabin in the mountains, 3 hours north of the city. Isolated, secure. A place where they could regroup and plan their next move without eyes watching their every breath. Cade's team had arrived ahead of them, sweeping the location and establishing a perimeter. Ronan met them at the door, his face grim. "We lost 3 men," he said without preamble. 2 more are critical. I've got them stabilized, but they need a hospital. Get them there. Use the offshore account for expenses. Their families get full compensation. Immediate. Already done. Ronan's eyes flicked to Lena. She okay? I'm fine, Lena said, though her voice was hollow. She's in shock, Cade corrected. Get the medic. I want her checked for injuries. I said I'm fine. Lena. Cade's voice was gentle but firm. Please, let them check. She wanted to argue, but the exhaustion was catching up with her. The fear. The adrenaline crash. So she nodded and let Ronan lead her to a bedroom where a woman with kind eyes and efficient hands examined her with clinical precision. Bruises. Rope burns on her wrists. A split lip she didn't remember getting. But nothing serious. Nothing permanent. Except the memories. When the medic left, Lena sat alone in the dimly lit room, staring at her hands. They were shaking. She couldn't make them stop. The door opened. Cade stepped inside, his face drawn with exhaustion and something darker. You should be resting, Lena said. So should you. He sat beside her on the bed, close enough that their shoulders touched. Talk to me. About what? About whatever you're thinking right now. Lena's breath hitched. I keep seeing it. The gun against my head. Marcus's face. The way he looked at me like I was nothing. Like I'd always been nothing. You're not nothing. I know that now, but for so long I believed it. I believed I deserved to be invisible. That I was wrong somehow, broken, and that's why no one wanted me. Tears spilled down her cheeks. And tonight, when he had that gun to my head, part of me thought, maybe he's right. Maybe I should have stayed invisible. Lena, but then I saw you, coming for me, fighting for me, and I realized something. She turned to face him, her eyes bright with tears and something fiercer. I'm not invisible anymore. I'm not that scared girl in the rain. I'm someone you chose to protect, someone worth saving, and I'm never going back to being nothing ever again. Cade cupped her face, his thumb brushing away tears. You were never nothing. You were just surrounded by people too blind to see what was right in front of them. And what do you see? I see the woman who made my fortress feel like a home, who had every reason to hate me and chose kindness instead. Who's stronger than anyone I've ever met, including myself? His voice roughened. I see the woman I love. Lena's breath stopped. What? I love you, Cade repeated, the words coming easier now. I didn't want to, didn't plan to, but somewhere between the coffee and the bread and the way you looked at me like I was human instead of a monster, I fell. Hard, and I'm not taking it back. Cade, you don't have to say it back. I just need you to know. I love you too, you idiot. Lena laughed through her tears. I've loved you since you held me while I cried. Since you protected me when you could have used me as leverage. Since you came through literal fire to get me back. They kissed again, slower this time, tender and full of promise. And when they finally pulled apart, Lena rested her head on his shoulder, feeling safe for the first time in her life. What happens tomorrow? She asked quietly. Tomorrow we start building something new, something that's just ours. And the families? Marcus? Dante? Marcus is finished. His allies will scatter. His empire will crumble. And Dante? Cade paused. Dante will respect your choice. He's a lot of things, but he keeps his word. I should probably talk to him eventually. He is my father, even if I don't know how to feel about that yet. When you're ready, no pressure, no timelines. Lena nodded, then quietly, what about Margot? Cade's jaw clenched. What about her? She's out there somewhere, thinking she won, thinking she destroyed you. She didn't destroy me. She tried, but she failed. Because of me? Because I chose you over revenge, over strategy, over everything I thought mattered. He took her hand. That was my choice, Lena, and I'd make it again in a heartbeat. even knowing the cost? Especially knowing the cost. They sat in silence for a while, processing everything that had happened. Then Lena spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I want her found. Cade turned to look at her. Margot? Yes. Not to hurt her, not for revenge, but I want to know why. I want to understand how someone could smile at me, help me settle in, and then hand me over to be killed. Some people carry their pain so long it turns into poison, Cade said quietly. Margot lost her husband and blamed me. Fair enough, but using you as a weapon? That's unforgivable. Will you find her? That's what you want. It is. But Cade, when you do find her, I want to be the one who talks to her. That's not safe. I don't care. She doesn't get to do what she did and just disappear. She needs to see that I survived, that her revenge failed, that love is stronger than hate. Lena's eyes blazed with determination. She needs to see who I became despite everything she tried to do. Cade studied her for a long moment. This wasn't the broken girl he'd found in the rain. This was someone new, someone forged in fire and pain and emerged stronger for it. Okay, he said, we'll find her. Together. Together, Lena echoed. The next morning brought news from the city. Marcus Voss had been found by his remaining staff, delirious from blood loss and pain. He'd been taken to a private hospital where he'd ranted about betrayal and conspiracies until the doctors sedated him. His empire was already fracturing, allies distancing themselves, business partners severing ties, the whole carefully constructed house of cards collapsing in spectacular fashion. Dante Calabrese had made a public statement claiming he'd acted to rescue an innocent civilian caught in crossfire between rival families. The police were investigating, but in the world of organized crime, investigations rarely led anywhere when the families involved were powerful enough to make evidence disappear. And Margot? She'd vanished completely. No credit card usage, no phone pings, no sightings. But Cade had people looking, people who specialized in finding those who didn't want to be found. It was only a matter of time. A week later, they got their answer. Ronan appeared at the cabin with a grim expression and a file folder. We found her. Where? Cade asked. Small town in Montana. She's using a fake name, working at a diner, keeping her head down. Alone? As far as we can tell. Lena, who'd been reading by the fire, set down her book. I want to go. Lena, Cade started. No, we agreed. I need to do this. Cade looked at Ronan, who shrugged. It's her call, boss. Fine, but we do this carefully. No risks. They flew to Montana the next day, Cade, Lena, and Ronan, with 2 additional security personnel keeping a discreet distance. The town was exactly what you'd expect. One main street, a handful of shops, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and strangers stood out. They found Margot at the diner during the lunch rush. She was working the counter, her hair pulled back, her face older somehow, despite only a week having passed. When she looked up and saw Lena standing in the doorway, the coffee pot she'd been holding slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. Hello, Margot, Lena said quietly. The diner went silent. Customers stared. The cook peered through the service window. Margot's face had gone white. You should be dead. I'm not. Lena walked forward, her steps measured and calm. Surprise. How did you find me? Does it matter? Lena slid onto a stool at the counter. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. That's fine. Then you can listen. Margot's hands clenched on the counter. If you're here to kill me, I'm not, though Cade probably wants to. Lena glanced at Cade, who stood by the door with his arms crossed, radiating controlled menace. But that's not why we're here. Then why? Because I want to understand. I want to know how you could look at me every day, help me, smile at me, and then hand me over to be murdered. Margot's jaw clenched. You wouldn't understand. Try me. For a long moment, Margot said nothing. Then, slowly, she sank onto the stool beside Lena, her whole body sagging with exhaustion. My husband was a good man, she said quietly. Not perfect. He worked for bad people, but he was kind. He made me laugh. And Cade Thorne killed him like he was nothing. I didn't kill him personally, Cade said from the doorway. But I gave the order, so the responsibility is mine. Margot's eyes filled with tears. For 10 years, I waited, planned. And when Marcus approached me, it felt like fate. A chance to make you feel what I felt, to take something you loved and destroy it. And did it work? Lena asked. Did destroying me make you feel better? Margot looked at her, really looked at her, and something crumbled in her expression. No, it made me feel like a monster. Good. You should feel like a monster, because what you did was monstrous, Lena's voice was steady. But I'm not going to kill you, Margot. I'm not even going to hurt you, because that would make me just like Marcus, just like everyone who's ever hurt someone weaker and called it justice. Then what do you want? I want you to live with what you did. I want you to wake up every day knowing that your revenge failed, that love was stronger than your hate. And I want you to understand something. Lena leaned forward. Cade did terrible things. He's not denying that. But people aren't just one thing. They're not just monsters or heroes. They're complicated. And the man who killed your husband? He's also the man who saved my life, who chose me over his empire, who's trying every day to be better than he was. That doesn't bring my husband back. No, it doesn't. And I'm sorry for your loss. I truly am. But using me as a weapon didn't bring him back either. It just created more pain, more victims. Margot was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to stop hurting. Then get help. Find a therapist. Join a support group. Do something other than destroying innocent people. Lena stood. You don't get redemption from me, Margot, but you do get a chance to choose differently going forward. Use it. She walked toward the door where Cade waited, but before she left, she turned back one final time. And Margot, if you ever come near me or Cade again, if you ever try something like this again, I won't be so forgiving. Next time, I'll let him handle it. And we both know how that ends. Margot nodded, her face buried in her hands. They left her there, broken and crying in a diner 1,000 miles from anywhere, and climbed into the rental car. You okay? Cade asked as they drove away. Lena nodded. Yeah, I am. She can't hurt us anymore, and maybe she'll actually get help. Maybe she'll choose to heal instead of hurt. And if she doesn't, then that's her choice. Her burden to carry, not ours. Cade reached over and took her hand. You're amazing. You know that? I'm learning to be, Lena smiled, with your help. They drove back to the cabin as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. And for the first time in both their lives, the future didn't feel like a cage. It felt like freedom. The weeks that followed their return from Montana moved in strange patterns, some days stretching endlessly, others disappearing in heartbeats. The cabin became something neither Cade nor Lena had expected. A home. Not the cold fortress of the penthouse or the prison of the old estate, but a real home built from morning coffee and shared silence, from laughter that came easier each day and touch that spoke louder than words. But the outside world never stayed quiet for long. Reports filtered in through Ronan's careful network. Marcus Voss had been committed to a private psychiatric facility, his mind fractured by blood loss and the spectacular collapse of everything he'd built. His organization had splintered into factions, each scrambling for scraps of territory and influence. Within 3 weeks, the Voss name meant nothing in the criminal underworld except as a cautionary tale. The other families watched and learned. They understood what Cade Thorne had demonstrated, that some lines, once crossed, brought total annihilation. Dante called twice. The first time, Lena let it go to voicemail, not ready for that conversation. The second time, 3 weeks after Montana, she answered. Hello, Lena. Dante's voice was warm but careful, like he was speaking to something fragile that might shatter. I wasn't sure you'd pick up. I wasn't sure I would either, Lena admitted. She was sitting on the cabin's porch, watching snow fall across the mountains. Cade was inside, reviewing reports with Ronan, giving her space without really leaving. But I've been thinking. About? About what you said. About family. About having a choice. She took a breath. I want to know you. Not as a replacement for anything or anyone, but as someone who's connected to my mother, someone who loved her. There was silence on the other end, then quietly, I'd like that very much. But I need you to understand something first. Cade isn't just someone I'm staying with. He's not a phase or a trauma response or whatever you might think this is. I love him. And that's not changing. I know. Dante's voice held surprising gentleness. I see the way he looks at you, the way he was willing to burn down the world to get you back. That's not possession, Lena. That's love. Real love. The kind your mother and I had. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. Really? Really? And I may not like sharing you, but I understand it. So here's what I propose. Dinner. Next week. You, me, and Thorne. Neutral ground. We talk. We figure out how this works. No pressure, no expectations. Okay, Lena said. I'd like that. Good. I'll have my people arrange security. Dante. Yes? Can we do it somewhere normal? Not some heavily guarded restaurant where everyone's watching. Just normal. Dante laughed, the sound rich and genuine. Normal. I can do normal. There's a small Italian place downtown. Family owned. Best pasta you've ever had. How does that sound? Perfect. When she hung up and went inside, Cade was waiting, his eyes searching her face. You talk to him, he said. Not a question. Yeah, we're having dinner next week, you, me, and Dante, if that's okay. It's your choice, Lena. I told you I wouldn't. I know what you told me, but this affects both of us. I'm not making decisions that impact our life without talking to you first. She crossed to him, taking his hands. We're a team now, partners. That means we decide things together. Cade pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. Partners. I like the sound of that. Good, because you're stuck with me. Best cage I've ever been in. Lena pulled back, swatting his chest. Don't call it a cage. Fine. Best partnership I've ever had. Better. The dinner with Dante happened on a Thursday evening at a small restaurant tucked between a bookstore and a vintage record shop. True to his word, Dante had chosen somewhere normal. Checkered tablecloths, candles in wine bottles, the smell of garlic and tomatoes heavy in the air. He was already seated when they arrived, standing immediately when he saw Lena. He'd dressed down, simple black sweater, no visible weapons, though Cade knew they were there somewhere. You didn't survive in their world without being armed. Lena, Dante's smile was warm but nervous. You look well. So do you. She let him pull out her chair, settling in while Cade took the seat beside her, his hand finding hers under the table. Dante noticed, smiled, didn't comment. The first hour was awkward, careful conversation about nothing important, the three of them circling each other like wary animals establishing territory. But somewhere between the appetizers and the main course, something shifted. Dante started talking about Isabella. She loved to paint, he said, his eyes distant with memory. Terrible at it, actually. Absolutely no sense of perspective or composition, but she painted anyway, these wild, colorful things that made no sense but somehow felt exactly right. Lena's breath caught. I didn't know that. Marcus probably destroyed all her work after she died. He hated her painting, said it was frivolous. Dante's jaw clenched. But I have one. A small canvas she gave me before we were forced apart. It's been in my office for 20 years. A garden that doesn't exist anywhere in reality, full of flowers that couldn't possibly grow together. I look at it every day and remember her. What was she like? Really like, I mean, not the version Marcus created. Dante's expression softened. She was light. That's the only way I can describe it. She walked into a room and everything felt brighter, warmer. She laughed at terrible jokes. She cried at sad movies. She believed in people even when they didn't deserve it. He looked directly at Lena. She would have loved you, the woman you've become, the strength you've shown. Tears streamed down Lena's face before she could stop them. I wish I could have known her, the real her. You do know her. You're just like her. Dante reached across the table, his hand hovering uncertainly. May I? Lena nodded, and he took her hand, his grip warm and surprisingly gentle. Your mother's greatest regret was giving you up to keep me alive. She wrote about it in her letters, about how she'd lie awake at night wondering if you were okay, if you were happy, if you knew how much she loved you. Dante's voice roughened. She died believing she'd failed you. But Lena, you need to understand, she did it all out of love. Flawed, imperfect love, but love nonetheless. I know, Lena whispered, I understand now, because I'd do the same for him. She glanced at Cade, who was watching her with such naked emotion it made her chest ache. I'd sacrifice anything to keep him safe. Dante looked at Cade, really looked at him, and something passed between them. Understanding, respect, the recognition of two men who'd found something worth protecting more than power or pride. Take care of her, Thorn, Dante said quietly. With my life, Cade replied. Good. Dante sat back, picking up his wine glass. Now, let's discuss how we're going to handle the transition of Marcus's former territories. Several families are already making moves, and I think it's in both our interests to ensure stability. And just like that, they were talking business, strategy, alliance. The conversation flowed easier now, lubricated by mutual respect and shared purpose. By the time dessert arrived, they'd sketched out the framework for a partnership that would reshape the city's power structure. But more importantly, they'd begun building something else, something that looked almost like family. A month later, the city had settled into a new rhythm. Marcus Voss remained locked away in his own broken mind. A cautionary tale whispered in dark corners. The Calabrese and Thorn families had formed an alliance that made them nearly untouchable, and Lena had started seeing a therapist, a quiet woman named Dr. Chen who specialized in trauma and recovery. How does it feel? Dr. Chen asked during one session. Having agency, making your own choices. Lena considered the question carefully. Terrifying, exhilarating, like learning to walk after spending your whole life crawling. And your relationship with Cade? How would you characterize it now? Lena searched for the right words. It's not what it was. It started as captivity, sure, but it became something else. A choice we both made. I chose to stay. He chose to let me in, and now we're choosing each other every single day. That's healthy. That's growth. Dr. Chen smiled. You've come a long way, Lena. I know, but sometimes I still feel like that girl in the rain, invisible, worthless. That's normal. Healing isn't linear, but the difference now is you don't stay in that feeling. You recognize it, acknowledge it, and choose differently. Lena nodded. It was true. The bad days still came, nightmares about Marcus's gun against her head, panic attacks triggered by unexpected sounds, moments of crippling self-doubt. But Cade was always there, steady and patient, reminding her that she was seen, valued, loved. And slowly, she was learning to believe it. The turning point came 6 weeks after the dinner with Dante. Cade and Lena were at the penthouse. They'd returned to the city 2 weeks earlier, though the cabin remained theirs, a refuge they could escape to whenever the world became too much. Cade was in his office handling business when Ronan appeared with an urgent expression. Boss, we have a situation. Cade looked up. What kind of situation? The Rivera family. They're making a move on the docks. Aggressive. They're claiming Marcus promised them the territory before he fell. Marcus promised a lot of things. Doesn't mean we have to honor them. Agreed. But they're not backing down. They've got muscle on the ground, and they're pushing our people out. Cade's jaw clenched. The Rivera family was old school, brutal, and stupid enough to mistake the recent peace for weakness. How many men do they have there? 20, maybe 30. And ours? 15. They're holding position but requesting backup. Cade stood, his mind already calculating strategies and contingencies. This was a test. The other families were watching to see if the alliance with Dante had made him soft. If he let the Riveras take the docks, others would push. The careful balance they'd constructed would collapse. He needed to respond. Hard, fast, decisively. But before he could give the order, Lena appeared in the doorway. What's happening? She asked quietly. Business, Cade said, his tone clipped. Nothing you need to worry about. If it involves you going somewhere dangerous, it's definitely something I need to worry about. She crossed her arms. Talk to me. Cade exchanged a glance with Ronan, who wisely retreated. When they were alone, Cade explained the situation. The Rivera family's move, the need for retaliation, the stakes involved. Lena listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You're going to go down there, she said finally. You're going to show force, assert dominance, probably hurt people. Yes. Because that's who you are. That's the world you built. Yes. Lena nodded slowly. Okay. Cade frowned. Okay? That's it? What do you want me to say, Cade? That I don't like it? I don't. That it scares me? It does, but I also understand it. She stepped closer, taking his hands. You're not just a mafia boss to me, but you are a mafia boss. That's part of who you are. And I knew that when I chose you. You shouldn't have to accept violence. I'm not accepting it. I'm accepting you, all of you, the man who holds me when I have nightmares and the man who will break bones to protect what's his. Both versions are real. Both versions are you. She squeezed his hands. Just promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll come back. That you won't take unnecessary risks just to prove a point. Cade pulled her close. I promise. I have too much to lose now. Good. Then go do what you need to do. I'll be here when you get back. The confrontation at the docks was brutal and brief. Cade arrived with 30 men, Dante's people backing him up, and the sheer display of force made the message clear. The Riveras had miscalculated badly. The head of their family, a man named Carlos Rivera, stood his ground initially, but when Cade put a gun to his knee and explained very calmly exactly what would happen if he didn't withdraw immediately, Carlos found wisdom. This is a mistake, Thorne, Carlos spat as his men loaded back into their trucks. You can't hold everything forever. I don't need forever, Cade said coldly. I just need to hold it longer than you can challenge me. And Carlos, you just lost your chance. Try this again and I won't be negotiating. I'll be attending your funeral. The Riveras left. Word spread quickly. Cade Thorne and Dante Calabrese were not to be tested. The alliance was real, powerful, and willing to defend their interests with overwhelming force. Cade returned to the penthouse at 2 a.m., exhausted and splattered with someone else's blood. He expected Lena to be asleep. Instead, she was waiting in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, a mug of tea cooling on the table beside her. When she saw him, she stood. Are you hurt? No. The others? Few cuts. Nothing serious. And the Riveras? Gone. They won't be back. Lena nodded. Then she crossed to him, stood on her toes, and kissed him gently. I'm glad you're safe. I need to shower. I'm covered in... I don't care. She kissed him again. I'm just glad you came home. Later, after Cade had washed away the evidence of violence and they were lying in bed together, Lena spoke into the darkness. I've been thinking about something. What's that? The money you make, the resources you have. What if we use them differently? Cade propped himself up on one elbow. What do you mean? I mean, you have more money than anyone could spend in 10 lifetimes, and most of it comes from questionable sources. What if we started moving it toward legitimate businesses, things that actually help people? You want me to go straight? Not entirely. I'm not naive enough to think you can just walk away from this life. But what if you started building something else alongside it? Something good. Something that means when people hear the name Cade Thorne, they don't just think of fear. Cade was quiet, processing. What did you have in mind? A foundation. For people like me. People who've been forgotten, thrown away, abused by their own families. We could provide housing, therapy, education, job training, give them a real chance. Lena's voice grew stronger. We could turn your fortress into something that saves people instead of controlling them. That's ambitious. We took down Marcus Voss and the Rivera family in the same month. I think we can handle running a charity. Cade laughed, the sound surprised out of him. You're serious about this? Completely. What do you think? What did he think? He thought Lena was offering him something he'd never dared hope for. Redemption. Not forgiveness for his past, but a chance to build a different future. To use the power he'd accumulated for something other than fear and control. I think, he said slowly, that you're going to change the world, Lena Voss, or Calabrese, or Thorne, whatever name you choose. I like the sound of Thorne, Lena said quietly. If you'll have me. Cade's heart stopped. Are you asking you to marry me? Yes, I know it's backward. I know we've only been together a few months, but I also know that I'm never going to want anyone else. You're it for me, Cade. So what do you say? For a long moment, Cade couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. He'd built an empire, survived assassination attempts, stared down death 100 times, but nothing had ever terrified and exhilarated him like this moment. Yes, he finally managed. Yes. 1,000 times, yes. Lena laughed, the sound pure joy, and kissed him until they were both breathless. The wedding happened 3 months later in a small ceremony at the cabin. Dante walked Lena down the aisle, a moment that made both of them cry. Ronan stood as Cade's best man, his face suspiciously shiny. Dr. Chen attended as a guest, beaming with pride at how far Lena had come. The ceremony was simple. No extravagance, no display, just two people choosing each other in front of the people who mattered most. When Cade slipped the ring onto Lena's finger, he whispered, "No more cages." "No more cages," Lena agreed. "Just choices." The reception was held in the cabin's great room, intimate and warm. At one point, Dante pulled Cade aside, his expression serious. "I want you to know something," Dante said. "When I first learned about Lena, when I found out she existed, I was angry. At Isabella for not telling me, at Marcus for hiding her, at the universe for stealing 22 years I could have had with my daughter." "I understand," Cade said, "but watching her today, seeing how happy she is, how strong she's become, I'm grateful. Because if Isabella had told me, if things had gone differently, Lena might have grown up comfortable and safe, but she wouldn't be who she is now. She wouldn't have survived what she survived. She wouldn't have become this fierce, incredible woman." Dante's eyes glistened. "So thank you, Thorn, for seeing her when no one else did, for loving her when she needed it most, for giving my daughter the life Isabella would have wanted for her." "I didn't give her anything," Cade said roughly. "She saved herself. I just got lucky enough to be there when she did." "Then we're both lucky." Dante extended his hand. "To family." Cade shook it firmly. "To family." The foundation launched 6 months after the wedding. The Thorn Foundation for Forgotten Voices, they called it. Lena ran it with the same quiet determination she'd brought to everything else, transforming Cade's money into housing programs, scholarship funds, therapy services, and job placement initiatives. Within the first year, they'd helped over 200 people rebuild their lives. Cade continued running his organization, but with Dante's partnership and Lena's influence, things changed. The most brutal aspects of the business were phased out. Legitimate enterprises grew. Violence became a last resort instead of a first response. Some of the old guard grumbled. A few left, seeking more traditional organizations, but most stayed drawn by the stability and the vision Cade and Dante were building. A criminal enterprise that didn't feed on suffering but on smart business and strategic thinking. It wasn't redemption exactly, but it was evolution. A year after the wedding, Lena sat in the foundation's office reviewing applications when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Lena?" The voice was familiar but changed, rougher, older. "Margot?" "Yes, I know I shouldn't call. I know you told me to stay away, but I needed you to know something." Lena's hand tightened on the phone. "What?" "I got help, like you said. I found a therapist, joined a grief support group, started volunteering at a women's shelter." Margot's voice shook. "It doesn't fix what I did. Nothing can fix that. But I'm trying to be better. To choose healing over hurt, like you said." Lena felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm glad, Margot. Truly. I saw the news about your foundation, about the work you're doing. It's incredible, Lena. You took all that pain, all that trauma, and turned it into something beautiful." A pause. "I'm proud of you. I know I don't have the right to be, but I am." "Thank you," Lena whispered. "I won't call again. I just wanted you to know that you were right. Love is stronger than hate. I see that now." Margot's voice broke. "Be happy, Lena. You deserve it." The line went dead. Lena sat for a long moment processing. Then she called Cade. "Everything okay?" He answered immediately, always attuned to her tone. "Yeah, actually, I think it is." She told him about the call, about Margot's words, about the strange sense of closure it brought. "How do you feel?" Cade asked. "Like maybe the world isn't just darkness. Like maybe people really can change if they choose to." "You changed me," Cade said quietly. "Turned a monster into something almost human." "You were always human, Cade. You just forgot for a while. I just reminded you." "Best reminder I ever had." That night, they stood together on the penthouse balcony, watching the city lights sprawl below them like fallen stars. Lena leaned back against Cade's chest, his arms wrapped around her, and thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that rain-soaked night when she'd been handed over like worthless collateral, through the slow transformation of captivity into partnership, through violence and betrayal and blood, through love discovered in the ruins of broken lives. "Do you ever regret it?" Lena asked quietly. "Choosing me over everything else?" "Never. Not once. Not ever." "Even when it cost you?" "Especially then, because it taught me something I'd forgotten." Cade turned her to face him, his hands cupping her face. "Empire means nothing if you have no one to share it with. Power means nothing if it doesn't protect what you love. I built a fortress to keep the world out, and you walked in anyway and made it a home." "We made it a home," Lena corrected. "Together." "Together," Cade agreed. In the distance, sirens wailed. The city never slept, never stopped its endless cycle of crime and punishment, hope and despair. But up here, in their fortress that was no longer a cage, Lena and Cade had found something rare and precious. They'd found each other, and they'd found themselves. 2 years after the wedding, the foundation had expanded to 3 cities. Lena was pregnant with their first child, a daughter they'd already decided to name Isabella, after the grandmother she'd never known. Dante visited weekly, already preparing to be the most overprotective grandfather in history. Marcus Voss died in the psychiatric facility, alone and forgotten, his mind so fractured he didn't even remember the daughter he'd thrown away. Lena felt nothing when she heard. No grief. No satisfaction, just a quiet sense of closure. The city's power structure had stabilized under the Thorne-Calabrese alliance. Other families knew better than to challenge them. Violence still happened. It always would in their world, but it was controlled, calculated, a scalpel instead of a hammer. And through it all, Cade and Lena built their life together. Some days were hard. Some days the past rose up and threatened to swallow them. But they faced it together. 2 people who'd been broken and rebuilt, stronger for the fractures. On a quiet Sunday morning, Cade found Lena in the library, sketching, as always. But now she wasn't drawing buildings or cityscapes. She was drawing people, faces full of life and hope. The clients from the foundation, their stories captured in delicate lines and careful shading. "That's beautiful," Cade said, looking over her shoulder. "It's Marcus," Lena said quietly, indicating a shadowed figure in the corner of the page, or who he was before hate consumed him. "I'm trying to understand." "Why?" "Because if I can understand how someone becomes that broken, maybe I can help prevent it. Maybe the foundation can reach people before they become monsters." She looked up at him. "Everyone starts human, Cade, even the worst of us. It's the choices we make that define us." "And what choices are we making?" Lena set down her pencil and took his hand, placing it on her growing belly. "We're choosing love. We're choosing family. We're choosing to build instead of destroy." "Best choice I ever made," Cade said, kissing her temple. "Second best," Lena corrected with a smile. "What was the first?" "Stepping out of that car in the rain, walking toward you instead of away, choosing to see you as human instead of a monster." Her eyes shone. "That's when everything changed." "You changed everything," Cade said. "You walked into my fortress and turned it into a home. You took a man who thought he was beyond saving and showed him redemption was possible. You made me believe in something other than power and fear." "What do you believe in now?" Cade pulled her close, their daughter resting between them. "I believe in second chances. I believe in love strong enough to survive hell. I believe in building a better world for our children. And I believe in you, Lena. Always you." Outside, the city moved on, indifferent to their story. But in the quiet sanctuary they'd built from blood and sacrifice and stubborn hope, Cade Thorne and Lena Thorne had found something most people in their world never experienced. They'd found peace. Not the peace of absence, no violence, no danger, no darkness, but the peace that came from choosing love over hate, from choosing partnership over power, from choosing to see each other not as captor and captive, monster and victim, but as 2 imperfect souls who'd found completion in each other. Years later, when their daughter Isabella asked how they met, Lena would tell her a simplified version, a story of unexpected meetings and gradual love. But when Isabella was old enough to understand complexity, when she was old enough to know that the world wasn't black and white, but infinite shades of gray, Lena would tell her the truth. She would tell her about a girl who'd been invisible her whole life, and a man who'd built walls so high he'd forgotten what it felt like to be human. She would tell her about a transaction in the rain that became something neither of them expected. She would tell her about violence and betrayal, about darkness and despair, about moments when giving up seemed easier than holding on. But mostly, she would tell her about choice, about choosing to see beyond the cage, choosing to believe in redemption, choosing to love someone not despite their darkness, but because they were willing to face it and change. The measure of a person isn't their worst moment, Lena would say, holding her daughter close. It's what they choose to do after. Your father chose to be better. I chose to give him that chance. And together, we chose to build something beautiful from the ruins. And you lived happily ever after, young Isabella would ask. Lena would smile, thinking of arguments and compromises, of difficult days and harder choices, of the constant work required to maintain love and trust and partnership. We lived, she would say simply, truly lived, not in a fairy tale but in the real world with all its complications. And we chose each other every single day. That's better than any fairy tale ending could ever be. On a warm spring evening, 5 years after that night in the rain, Kate and Lena stood together on the balcony of their penthouse. Their daughter Isabella slept peacefully in her nursery. The foundation had just opened its 10th location. Dante was downstairs having dinner with his new partner, a kind woman named Elena who made him laugh the way he hadn't in 20 years. The city sprawled below them, alive and chaotic and beautiful. Do you ever think about that night? Lena asked. When you came to collect collateral and found me instead? Every day, Cade said. What do you think would have happened if things had gone differently? If Marcus had sent Natalia like he was supposed to? I'd probably still be exactly what I was. A cold, ruthless bastard with an empire and no soul. Cade pulled her closer. You saved me, Lena, from becoming the very thing I fought against my whole life. We saved each other, Lena corrected. You gave me visibility when I'd been invisible. I gave you humanity when you'd forgotten what it felt like. Equal trade? The best trade ever made. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their city, their world, the life they'd built from ashes and determination. And in that moment, Lena understood something profound. She'd spent her whole life believing she was nothing, that being invisible meant being worthless, that love was something other people experienced but never her. But standing here, wrapped in Cade's arms, their daughter sleeping peacefully, a foundation helping hundreds of forgotten souls find their voice, a family cobbled together from broken pieces, she finally understood. She hadn't been invisible because she was worthless. She'd been invisible because the world had been too blind to see her value. And when someone finally looked, really looked, they'd seen not a victim or a pawn or a forgotten daughter, but a woman of incredible strength and resilience, a survivor, a fighter, a force of nature wrapped in quiet determination. Cade had seen her first, but she'd seen him too, seen past the monster to the man, past the violence to the vulnerability, past the fortress to the heart that beat beneath it all. I love you, she said, simple and true. I love you too, Cade replied. Always have, always will. And there, 50 stories above a city that had tried to break them both, Lena Thorne stood wrapped in her husband's arms and realized something extraordinary. She was finally, completely, utterly free. Not because someone had unlocked her cage, but because she'd chosen to walk out. And she'd chosen exactly where to stand. The rain had brought them together on that cold night years ago. Lena stepping out of a car like a ghost, Cade expecting defiance and finding surrender. But what neither of them had known then, what they'd discovered through blood and sacrifice and stubborn hope, was that sometimes the best love stories begin in the darkest places. Because darkness teaches you to recognize light, and cages teach you to value freedom, and being broken teaches you exactly how to heal. They'd been the transaction in the rain, a deal that should have ended in 6 months with nothing changed and no hearts touched. Instead, they'd become each other's salvation. And that, Lena thought as she watched the city lights blur and blend into something beautiful, was the greatest miracle of all. Not that they'd survived, but that they'd chosen to thrive. Together, always together.